A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay, and welcome to a slightly different venue. We are not in the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar. As you can see, I wish my cellar looked like this. This instead is the newest restaurant in Johannesburg, and it is by some distance one of the coolest. It's a restaurant I had the delight of hosting the opening for just over a week ago. It is the Old Oak, and it is at Royal Johannesburg. And before you go, hang on, Dan, that's at a golf club. I've eaten at golf clubs before. They're boring and the food's not very exciting. And why on earth would I want to go and have toasted sandwiches and 3-day-old chicken schnitzels at a golf club? Well, here you have got something very different. The man you've just seen in question is a guy called Chris Bentley. And Chris is the CEO here at Royal Johannesburg. And he told me about this project a few years ago. It was to create a restaurant where casual fine dining still allowed families to come together. And if it sounds like that is an impossible task, well, I think that he might just have nailed it, or more specifically, his team might just have nailed it. And what a team he has. And the two headline acts join us on the show this week. The head chef, Bertus Besson, used to work for him at Overture, Ransley Pietersen, and Ruaan Duvenage, who's overseeing the restaurant sommelier and working with the wine. So they'll be joining me in just a moment, along with Dirk Coetzee, the winemaker down at L'Avenir. What is L'Avenir doing on this show about Royal Johannesburg? Well, there's a rather special connection between the two that manifests itself in some rather nice wine, and I think you can probably make the connection. So in just a moment, I shall cross to the other side of the Old Oak, where Ruaan and Ransley are waiting, and we'll drop down to Stellenbosch, where Dirk has spent a busy day kicking off his week in the cellar. But before we do that, let's have a quick look at some news from the world of wine. We mentioned this on the show last week. This is at the Mall of Africa. It is the Pick n Pay Wine and Food Festival on the 2nd of July. The first one took place a couple of weeks ago down in Cape Town. Sadly, I couldn't make it. I was supposed to be there, and then after my paddle injury and my snapped Achilles, I was unable to travel, and I was very, very bleak not to be able to, because it looked like a terrific celebration of food and wine. It will be so again, the Mall of Africa, and that is on the 2nd of July. If you'd like to go along, you will get the chance to get your tickets at Web Tickets, drop in at Pick n Pay, and check out some great food, meet some fabulous winemakers. There is live entertainment. I shall be wandering around. I'll be doing a couple of tasting venues, and there will be lots of wine from some fabulous, fabulous South African wine estates. Let's move on to Provine. Provine is on in Germany at the moment. I think half the South African wine industry is traveling somewhere in the world at the moment. And on screen is Tim Hutchinson. Tim Hutchinson is the chair of DGB, and that is the award for Best Producer South Africa at this year's Provine. They haven't had the big German wine for a couple of years now. They're all in Dusseldorf, and they are up and running, and by all accounts having a great time. I've seen a number of South Africans over there celebrating. I saw Beaumont's wines were on show from their German partners. Big Gerard Holden is over from Holden Mance. I saw Hein van Lochenberg over there as well. Not Hein van Lochenberg, sorry. Hein from Lamont. So a great selection of South Africans, but top of the pile, well done to DGB. I think they got 11 gold medals amongst their selection, with the bulk of those coming from Boschendal and from Bellingham. So congratulations. On to this Wednesday evening, if you're at Loose End, if you're up in Johannesburg, 6 o'clock until 9 o'clock at the Southern Sun Hyde Park, 290 rand a person, and you will get the chance to drink a selection of wine from Constantia. It is the Constantia Showcase, both Constantia Bakenbewagte, Constantia Glen Eagles Nest, Constantia Royal, Groot Constantia, Silver Mist, and Steenberg Vineyards. Southern Sun Hyde Park, you can see a selection of the winemakers there. Justin van Vyk from Constantia Glen will be tasting some of his new releases in the coming weeks. Bulle Gerber, we'll be catching up with him later this week for the magazine show. Matt Day in there. the wonderful selection of Constantia winemakers, Alunda Basson from Steenberg. Actually seeing her for a tasting on Thursday. So a great collection of top South African winemakers, and you can see them all on Wednesday evening at the Southern Sun Hyde Park. Right, so there you go. There's some things to do. I would also highly recommend a visit here, and this is the Old Oak at Royal Johannesburg. It's been going now for just over a week. Their first Sunday was last weekend. It was a hit. Yesterday, they were absolutely packed to the rafters, and it's not hard to see why. They've got a fabulous chef. They've got a wonderful wine list. The decor is superb. And then if you look out that way, they've got such a cool children's playground that I'm sorely tempted, crutches notwithstanding, to go. You can see the trampolines they've got. There are loads of jungle gyms. It's just a really cool space. So ideal. Bring the kids along. What I love about the kids section is they've also got a pizza oven and pizza chef. You bring your kids along, they get an apron, they get a hat, they get to make their own pizzas, they get to pop them in the oven with help and under guidance. And it's just a really nice family space that still allows adults to have some proper food and some really good wine. So I love the combination. I love the club. It's my home golf course. And I also love the people behind it. So let's cross to a couple of them. They've been nursing their wine this evening and preparing for tonight. Ransley Pietersen, one of South Africa's top young chefs, and Ruaan Duvenage, who's got a real flair for the art of wine. Gentlemen, welcome. And I can see from the smiles on both of you, which are a little different to the stress I saw a Friday or so ago, that in many ways, I'm sure, almost slightly surreal that this project you've been planning for so long is now finally up and running, taking shape and going.
Definitely, it's been, Dan, first of all, thank you so much for having us on the show. And it's been a work in progress, but we're super happy with what it's come out to be. And we're just excited to be in the space and share it with all of our diners and, showcase a little bit of us on a plate and in a glass of wine.
And that wine we shall get into in just a moment. Before I ask you about that wine, Ruaan, just give me a little bit of an idea, Ransley, first of all, of your own background, because I remember first meeting you and there was this very quiet chef who just sat there and didn't really say much, which wasn't like most of the chefs I knew. And then whispers started coming through. Oh, no, he's cooked for Bertus Basson and he's been at Jamie's Italian and he's run restaurants all over the place. Give us the shortened version of the sparkling Ransley Pietersen CV.
Sparkling. So a couple of years back in 2015, I worked under Bertus Basson as a young student, obviously part of my placement. When I left Cape Town 9 months later, I went back to college and I got offered a job to open up Vermeer in Linwood with Adrian Maria after he left Roots Restaurant. From there, I worked at Jamie's Italian under Shane Smith for 2.5 years, and from there he took me to open up Mazzafiato at Serengeti Estates from scratch. So pretty much the past 6 years of my life has been 2 years on a building site and the rest cooking. So very privileged to have worked under all of those chefs, and I've gained a lot in terms of kitchen experience as well as developers experience. So I'm super proud and super happy and grateful to have worked under them.
And now with your own space, we'll look at the menu in a second. Before we do that, Ruaan, what about your background? We have you here now looking over the restaurant, looking over the wine, clearly having plenty of fun. What's your background? How do you end up here?
So Dan, basically how it started for me, I studied IHS just after school in 2007, 8 and 9. And I started my journey in hotels, Emperor's Palace. After that, I moved to Kruger National Park, where I worked at Singita, Lebombo and Sweni Lodges, where I gained most of my experience from the sommelier over there and the guys, Kevin Pongola, which taught me most that I know now. But after that, the Grill House group of restaurants, they've all moved on now and working for Saints and a couple of other places. So it's all to thank those guys for all the experience we've gained and I've gained throughout my career. Moving to the Grill House, in Sandton as well. Did a little stint there. We did at the Bull Run in Sandton. I had my own business for 3 years, a little pop-up restaurant with a food truck. I met Ransley at Serengeti Estates. Worked there for a couple of, well, not a couple of years, a year and 3 months. And then after that, we joined the Royal team, and we're very excited to be here and open the Old Oak restaurant. And it's only up from here.
So plenty of experience between the two of you. Experiences has led into a wine list I'm genuinely excited about, and a menu that I am equally intrigued by. Let's start with that menu, because it's a menu that is going to lead naturally into the wine. I'm seeing touches of Mediterranean. I'm seeing, particularly for this time of the year, some great food as we approach winter. What inspired the menu, both from your perspective as a chef, Ransley, but also knowing that this is the kind of restaurant that Chris and team had in mind when you all sat down to create what was going to be coming out of the kitchen?
So it's a funny story, Dan. When I was approached by Chris to join the Royal team, and he had this project that he was busy on, and I said, okay, what's the boundaries, what's the guidelines, and forget about all the other stuff. What freedom is there? And he said, you have full autonomy. You decide the menu, you decide what we serve, and I'm trusting you fully. So with that weight on my shoulder, I've changed the menu 6 times in the last year before we've opened. And funny story, the menus actually got delivered on Friday morning, 2 hours before opening. Had Chris on the edge of his seat, obviously, but the inspiration behind the menu was to introduce a slightly cleaner eating style where you can still enjoy the food you're eating. And there's no better diverse menu than a Mediterranean menu. And because we want to celebrate the Old Oak that once was, you'll see the stump here at the back is what the restaurant is named after. The story of the Old Oak tells us to look to the horizon with the spirit of Ubuntu. And we took inspiration from the story, and we want to celebrate our people on a menu, As South Africans, most of our fondest memories are shared around a dining room table or a Sunday lunch, So the menu is a very diverse menu celebrating our culture. We've taken stuff like hertsoggies and deconstructed it and made a dessert out of it, like plated instead of a normal tart, where you find things like slapak skeentjies from the Western Cape, Cape Malay pickled onion that we have on our breadboard. We've taken inspiration from the Indian cuisine as well, obviously being Indian. I introduced a roti on the menu that has a pork shish kebab. Now, in the Indian culture, you'll very seldom find pork being consumed by anyone. And I love pork personally. My family and I consume copious amounts of wine with pork. And so we've taken those elements and we've turned it into something that can be enjoyed by every single diner that walks in the door. The menu is very diverse, and when it comes to stuff like our vegetarian options, we've put a lot of love and care into training our chefs that veg was pulled out of the ground for consumption. So you have to treat it with the same life that you do with your proteins. And I think we've slightly challenged the status quo when it comes to vegetarian food as well.
Which leads you to something of a challenge, Ruaan, because you've got a schizophrenic chef who's changed his menu 6 times before you've even opened. You've got a golf course. So am I getting golfers coming in? Is it families coming in? Is it fine dining people? It's beautiful for Sunday lunches, but there's also got a private dining room for special dinners. It is such a wide space. How on earth do you sit down and start to work out what your wine list is going to be with so many variables?
That is a very, very good question. I think Chef Ransley had us all on our toes the whole time. And I must tell you, he's changed the menu so many times before opening. But I think the most recent one was a week before we opened the restaurant. And I got a message 2 o'clock in the morning, and he said, listen, I can't sleep. I've made some changes on the menu. And I'm like, Ransley, you know, it's a week from opening. We can't keep changing. This is the last change you're getting. You've used all your cards. We can't do this again. But no, it hasn't been a struggle. Ransley and myself, we've always had the same view about food and how we see it. Same with wines. And we've got a thing where we go and if we do a wine pairing, we actually choose the wine before we choose the food. So, which made it a bit easier. But showcasing our wines was basic, or choosing the wine list, if I can have to say, is basically we went through choosing the best regions from the best winemakers, best styles. So yeah, what we have on our wine list is 81 different wine choices that you can have, all different varietals. And basically we went through over 200 different wines to determine what would be the best for our guests and what will work the best with our food and our menu. We've also done a special pairing on our wine list. So we don't have a wine pairing on the food list. We're actually getting some food that's paired on the wine list. So I do believe we are the first people to do that, maybe. I'm not sure what I've researched. So we'll see how that goes. But it's always the wine first and then the food, which I'm very happy about. I think Ransley also enjoys it.
To win every
exactly.
now and then.
But yeah, from the wine point of view, we've got a phenomenal selection. Obviously, we'll get into the old oak wines now, which is from Dirk Coetzee and Lavenier that they've specially made for us with our own label. But we've got a fantastic selection of whites, fantastic selection of reds, everything from Stellenbosch to the Elgin Valley, anything from Arniston Bay. So we've got a selection for everybody. Price point is from affordable to collector stuff. And I don't want to say too much about this, but we also have some stuff in our cellar that is not on the wine list. So if you don't see anything you like, which is hard, that you won't find anything, but we do have some hidden gems in the cellar that you can choose off list.
It is a sparkling wine list. We'll go into it in some more detail in just a moment. We've got a number of people watching. I see Musa Mojera. Oh my gosh, I'm fangirling my own workplace. Virtual hug straight back to you, Musa. Sasta Kupin, absolutely stellar. I think there are a few people who would agree. And Chef Lee, who's either got a first name that coincides with what Ransley does for a living or is a chef herself, just lit up with delight. Lovely to have all of you watching us as we sit at a restaurant that doesn't just have a broad wine list from different estates. It's also got its very own wine. It's wine made by Lavenier. It's wine made by Dirk Coetzee, who's with us down in Stellenbosch after a hard day's work. Is Salvador. Dirk, lovely to have you on the show and welcome. I think is it a decade or so now that you've been at Lavenier?
Yeah, I've been with Lavenier for 14 years this year, or it was my 14th harvest, so I've been here quite a long time, I must say.
So well established, and obviously an estate we know well from the show, and I think most South African wine drinkers will have a pretty good feel for a lot of the wine that you make. Give us a sense, 14 years in, 14 harvests in now, before we look at this specific wine that you've made with Royal Johannesburg. But what is it for you about Lavenier and about the terroir that allows you to make the wine that you do and to create the style that you do?
Yeah, Ransley just mentioned, or both of them mentioned, that they start with a wine. I think for Lavenier, we started with the soil. You know, that's where wine normally starts. And in 2013, the big boss said, listen here, Dirk, you know what? The farm's yours now. So what do you want to do with it? And I really believe that we went into a space where we decided to specialize, but we specialized in the two varietals, the two most, I would say, emblematic varietals for South Africa, and that's Pinotage and Chenin. But why did we choose these two varietals? It's because it fit our soil to the best and our terroir. And I think whatever you drink from Lavenier needs to speak of a sense of place. Ransley and them also spoke about the diversity of this country. So I always say, when you drink something from Lavenier, you don't just drink the best from South Africa, not just the best from Stellenbosch, but the best coming from our terroir, from Lavenier, and that's very important for us. It needs to speak of a sense of place. It's almost like you're on the farm and you get into my bucky and we go up the hill and you can taste the soil, you can feel the ocean, you know, you need to feel those elements and you need to taste that in our wines too. It needs to speak of that sense of place.
And I've got no doubt that the terroir and the sense of place influences the Pinotage in particular, but I've got a feeling it wasn't only that that pushed you into this love of Pinotage, which you have. Tell me a little bit about the influence of Francois Naudier.
Yeah, so Francois had a big influence on my journey. It's definitely I've seen as my father if it comes to the industry. I think it's just an amazing person. Also, you know, he came from Pretoria, being a chemist, met up with Mark Vier, bought this farm at that stage called Weltevrede. And then, you know, you can just imagine a Frenchman trying to pronounce Weltevrede. It's impossible. So, yeah, they called it L'Avenir, which means the future. And then Francois, at that stage, being a handyman, met up with Mark. And today he's the most awarded winemaker, or one of the most special winemakers in the country. He won the most Pinotage awards. If you think about Pinotage, he's part of the CWG. So yeah, just a memorable person, really a mentor for a lot of people, not just myself, especially a lot of youngsters. So it's great to have somebody his age and still being able to share the knowledge that you've got. A lot of people normally don't like to share, but with Francois it's different. He loves to share and really loves to share with our varietal Pinotage.
And it is one that finds its way into a bottle under the Old Oak label. Well, what's your reaction as a winemaker when you get a query from some golf course in Johannesburg that wants to make some wine and do something special? How do you respond to that sort of request? And what formed your thinking as you started working out what might be the ideal offering for somewhere like Royal Johannesburg and their new restaurant?
Yeah, we're always ecstatic when somebody wants to do a co-branding, and we decided really, I think for Ransley and them too, you know, they approached us and we knew that it's a perfect fit. We all believe in the same things. You know, he mentioned their tree, we've got a tree. We believe in human capital. It's more than just wine at the end of the day, and it's the same for them. It's about family. It's about fine dine at some places, but also not fine dine at other places. So I think there was a great fit in terms of what we can offer for the guys. And yeah, Fritz Bruin, who's our sales representative, really mended the relationship and got the relationship going, which we feel very privileged to be part of. And also, if you look at the great food they've got in their offering, it's always great to be paired with such food and so much diversity. And to see these two varietals really play off if it comes to food pairing is always great. So yeah, it was just I would say a normal fit and an easy fit at the end of the day.
You mentioned Fritz there. You also talked about Francois being a father figure. Hard not to think that Fritz's real dad isn't Trevor Quirk, but we'll keep that debate for another day. I see Sasta Kuppen following on there, Dan. We can't imagine a better way to spend our Monday afternoon, an informative and invigorating interview. Well, let's go back to our informative and invigorating pair who are behind the operation here at the Old Oak and start with the first of the wines, which is the Chenin. I know you wanted a white, you wanted a red. Chenin is such a wonderfully diverse grape, Ransley, when it comes to pairing up with food. Was it a pretty simple decision? White wine, Chenin Blanc, away we go?
Look, I think the wine speaks for itself, and you know, Chenin is a very diverse varietal in that you monitor the acidity, the fruitiness of the wine, and it can pose a lot of obstacles in your way when you pair it with food. But the first time I had, well, not the first time I really sat down to enjoy a glass of the single block Chenin with Dirk. Oh, it was with Ido and Fritz at Moza a couple of years ago. I think it was about 2.5 years ago, just before COVID. I opened up this bottle of single block Chenin and I tasted the wine, and I was working under Shane Smith at the time, and tasted the wine. I said, listen, I looked at Shane looked at me, and he said, you know exactly what to do. I said, yeah. So I went in the kitchen, and half an hour later I appeared with a plate of 12 out of 12 marble score Wagyu with ponzu sauce. And Fritz looked at me and he said, what is this for? I said, it's for the Chenin. myself and Shane had a chuckle, and when Ido tasted it, it brought tears to his eyes. And Fritz, I won't repeat what he said, but he was pretty blown away. So from there, when we had the tasting with our entire senior management team at Royal, Chenin from Lavanier is world class. It's some of the best Chenin I've had in my life, my very short life, but nonetheless, it is one of the best Chenins I've had ever.
Ruaan, I'm sure you were pretty confident that you'd get a wine you were happy with, knowing both where it was coming from and who was responsible for making it. But in terms of the style, how much input did you have with Dirk in creating this particular wine? And what was your reaction when you tried the final product for the first time?
Yeah, Dan, so basically we tried a couple of wine farms. Obviously, Ransley had a relationship with Fritz and Lavanier before I did. Didn't know a lot about the wines, but as soon as we started, we said, listen, we want to create our own wine. We want to put something on the bottle that's going to tell the story and the journey of the Old Oak, and it needs to be the best. There was no way that I was going to put something in a bottle that was going to be of lesser quality or a cheap house wine. So I went in with absolutely getting the best of what we could have, and that being a Pinotage, which is proudly South African, and then obviously Chenin, and South Africa being one of the biggest Chenin producers in the world. And as soon as we went through all the wine farms, tasted everything, the last tasting was actually Lavanier with Ido and Fritz, and they blew me away with their wine selection. So we had the Horizon range, we had their Provenance range, we had the single block range. I immediately said, we're not doing the Horizon range, we're going with the Provenance. And obviously what stood out for us being South African was the Chenin and the Pinotage. But I do believe we chose the best of what there is outside. The quality just speaks for itself. I mean, for the price point that we're offering at, it's a steal. So we want to offer that to our guests. It's very accessible to everybody, and it pairs with most things. We've actually had this wine with a couple of dishes, even some desserts, some spicy dishes, and it works phenomenal. When we first got our first batches of wine, which actually came up, I don't know who was more emotional, myself or Ransley. I think Ransley took the cake on that one. But it was an absolutely superb moment to open the box. Here we've got our own wines. I mean, the wine labels were designed by Joanne Bretz. She's from Marika Joe Designs. She did a fantastic job with the labels, and we couldn't have produced something better. I think it speaks for itself. You just need to taste it as well. So yeah, we were super excited and super happy for it to have it.
Well, this is the wine here, the Old Oak Chenin. I've got some in glass. I'm going to try in a second with Dirk. Before I do that, you mentioned price point. If I drop in at the restaurant, what am I paying for a bottle of this, Ruaan?
So we've basically made the prices very accessible. So it's 215 Rand a bottle, both for the red and the white. And then we also have a take-home price where you can buy a case and enjoy it at home, and that we're selling at 805 Rand for a case, which is an absolute steal. I mean, we've actually dropped our margins a little bit just to make it more accessible for everybody to enjoy the journey and the story of the Old Oak, together with Lavanier and what they produce.
I think this wine is going to be moving rather quickly here at the Old Oak. Let's go back down to Stellenbosch. The easy job to do, the easy way to do this, Dirk, would simply grab a barrel or something you've got sitting in the back of the cellar. Let's pour it in. They can slap the labels on, and bang, we've got it done. I suspect the process was a little more involved and a little more specific than that.
Yeah, normally some of the guys think it's just a tap that you can open, but no, there's a lot of thinking that goes into it. But yeah, working with passionate guys like you've seen now and you've heard, it's always great to share that passion. I think for me personally, Chenin Blanc is so versatile, and it's known for two things. And the one thing is that it's a great descriptor of where it's been planted. And yes, I always say to people when they come to Lavanier, Lavanier is maritime influence. And they say, but how come, you're in the middle of Stellenbosch, we can't really feel the ocean. I normally tell them, get in the bakkie. When we go up the hill, you can feel the beautiful breeze coming from the ocean. You can almost smell the bamboo. And really, our vineyards are situated, most of them situated on the back of the farm, on the western slopes. So I normally try to combine the freshness that I get from the ocean, but also from the cooling effect, especially at nighttime. But then I want to also combine that with the maturity that we get from Chenin Blanc in South Africa. Normally, I always say when you've got a Chenin Blanc berry in your hands and you pick it up and you see that beautiful golden strawy color, and that you want to mimic, you want to have that in your wine. So when you drink Chenin from South Africa and from Lavinier, you taste a little bit of that maturity, and combined with that freshness that we do get at Lavinier or in the vineyards that we farm. So this specific Chenin is a great descriptor of where it's been planted. And then the other thing which Chenin is known for, it's known for as a mouth wine. It's not like Sauvignon Blanc that's going to hit you in the face with a lot of aromatics. It's quite gentle on the aromatic side, but once you taste the varietal, you just fall in love with it because it's so textured. And this is a kind of texture that I wanted to create for Ransley and the guys to work with. So at the end of the day, I wanted to do something which has got texture, which has got a little bit of oaking to it. So it's a slightly oaked wine, but it's also a great descriptor of all 11 blocks that I've got on the farm. So at the end of the day, I want you to taste the best Chenin that I can get from this specific site. And I want Ransley and the guys to be able to pair, Ruaan and them to be full of confidence when they walk to that table. And I always say, whenever you walk to a table and you introduce Lavinier to somebody, you need to have the most confident, attitude in your life, because otherwise I've done my job incorrectly. So I truly believe that they can feel the passion, they can feel the place where it's from, but they can also pair that with their great dishes.
I've got some at the moment. You mentioned a little bit of oak, a wine that's for a restaurant called the Old Oak. You couldn't really get away without having any, but it's done sparingly, and it certainly doesn't mask any of the fruit that you've got here. You've got the oak for the oak. What about the old for the old? Are these old vines that you've made this from?
This specific wine is not made from the old vines. A little portion of it will definitely come from the old vines, but it's actually made from various blocks on the back of the farm, which I personally believe is some of our best blocks. Yes, the single block Chenin is an amazing wine, and thank you for the feedback and comments, guys. We do appreciate it. In the wine business, you don't get a lot of great comments and feedback, so it's always great to have good feedback. But yeah, so a portion, whatever is not selected for the single block Chenin, those components will go into this specific wine. So yes, it will have a little bit of a stint of, I would say, 20 to 25% of the old block, but most of it, the majority comes from those beautiful blocks on the back of the farm, which makes exquisite wine. I always ask the Lord that I want to farm on terraces, and those vineyards are terraced, and it's just lovely to farm there. When you're up on the hill and you see Stellenbosch Mountain and you see the topography of our industry, you just feel the heartbeat of Stellenbosch. And that's important for us to really showcase that and for people to be able to hear the story. And that's why you need guys like sommeliers, you need them because they need to tell the story. And it's a passionate business. It's all about emotions, and it's all about great taste and mouthfeel.
Well, you're in some good company with the wine. Ken Forrester's Dirty Little Secret is on this wine list. There's some Orpheus and the Raisin, some of Adi Badenhorst's in as well. But I think it fits very nicely amongst all of those. If I am ordering something from your menu, Mr. Pietersen, give me a particular dish, possibly one I might not initially be thinking of when I have a look at the menu, that you think is going to strike a real chord with this Old Oak Chenin Blanc.
Well, then the Old Oak Chenin Blanc, which Dirk said is very versatile, will go, I think, specifically well with our squid dish. We have a little bit of a nasturtium paste for slight pepperiness, a garlic emulsion, some burnt lemon on there to take away the zestiness, but just introduce a slight sweetness as well. And then we spice our squid with a little bit of fennel and cumin, just to give it a little bit of spice.
If you're not feeling slightly peckish already, you are not human. All right, let's move on to the red wine then. You gave us the thought process behind Chenin as a white. Then on to the red, and where Chenin is such an all-embracing wine, it can be a little trickier to find a red wine that ticks quite as many boxes as Chenin does in terms of food pairing. Why Pinotage, Ransley?
So then Pinotage, as Dirk said, and Ruaan, is a proudly South African varietal. So we were going to bend over backwards to find the perfect Pinotage to put our label on, and just by coincidence and a little bit of pushing, we chose the Lavanier Provenance, and I think the style of this Pinotage is different to others that I've tasted in that it's smoother, it's well balanced, it's very versatile, and you can feel the love and passion of Dirk in the wine. You know, it speaks volumes of the gentle care that he takes when he does his winemaking processes, and you know, it speaks to me on a different level, because when I cook with soul rather than a recipe. So choosing the Pinotage was more on an emotional level rather than anything else.
And that's cooking with soul in terms of passion and spirit as opposed to fish, but I'm sure it will be on the menu if you ask Ransley nicely. What about for you, Ruaan, is your signature red? Yes, Pinotage is South Africa's very own grape, but there are a lot of red grapes we're doing particularly well. What was your philosophy in terms of deciding on what would work best here as the headline act?
Well, again, as we said earlier, and I think we've repeated ourselves quite a bit when we say Pinotage, the idea behind the wine list was also to go purely South African. The only international wine that we have is a Prosecco from Italy, which is the Valdo Prosecco. But all the other wines on our list are all from South Africa. So it's really, again, living the passion and living the dream about South African wines and educating people more about what lovely wines are there in South Africa. So you'll see we have a couple of big hitters on the wine list, but I would say it's probably about 20 or 30% of the wine list only, where 70% of the wine list are all small wine producers. Love and passion goes into everything. We're all about relationships with the farms and the winemakers. And we do that with our guests as well. You know, when you come to the Old Oak, you most definitely leave as family. And we feel that all the wine farms that we get involved with, we're already family with, you know, with Ido, with Fritz, with Dirk, everybody. And so choosing this Pinotage again, it's lovely. I'm biased because Pinotage is my favorite varietal. So that's the one I was hunting for from the start. But yeah, so this Pinotage in the bottle itself, I don't think we could do better for our own label.
Sasta Kupen who's watching. If wine hasn't inspired a universal shift in your life, you haven't found the right wine yet. Novasha Pile is in an excitable mood. Let's go, says Sasha. And then Sasta following on with, when I cook with soul. Ransley Pietersen, and she's reading that off the tattoo she has on the inside of her wrist. Let's head back down to Lavanier and this Pinotage space, Dirk. I was chatting to Christian Eads on the show last week about Chenin Blanc as the latest Wine Mag Awards had come out, and how it's there's so many different styles of Chenin to try and compare when giving one the accolade of best on show in a particular competition. I think that probably applies even more to Pinotage, because the interpretation of the grape from something big and strong and thunderous to wines that are softer and more elegant and reflect the two grapes that gave us Pinotage, that Pinot Noir and that Cinsault heritage. You've got this really wide spread. What's your take on where Pinotage is in South Africa at the moment, as I know it's a grape that's really close to your heart?
Yeah, it's such a young varietal, you know. We've only done about 60 to 62 proper harvests with this specific grape. But I can say that we're in a maturing phase. I think the experimentation has been done. I think we're quite lucky at where we find ourselves in terms of site-specific Pinotages across the country. Pinotage today is widely planted, And that's why you also have various styles in it. I think the beauty of Pinotage is its versatility. And that's also something that L'Avenir is known for, and it's something that I feel very proud of, or feel very amped to really show people the versatility of this varietal of ours. You know, I do from an MCC 100% Pinotage to a beautiful blend rosé. Then I also do something which is a little bit lighter in style. I think Pinotage, because it's such a varietal with such great tannin structure, when you do something light, it still has that firm tannin and backing, which is great because it's not like you're drinking something which is too watery. It's just a beautiful wine. You can cool it down over lunchtime, and then you go into your smarter stuff, your more complex wines, which is normally your provenance and the single block that we specialize in, and that's single parcel, which is a little bit more, I would say, old school. But again, I think L'Avenir shows a lot of modern side of Pinotage. You know, I personally believe that we don't just farm Pinotage nowadays on northern slopes where it's warm and with goblet or bush vine as we call it. We actually farm it on our cooler slopes as well, trellis. So there you get a lot of that acidity coming through. And then I think the unique thing about L'Avenir, which is different from other farms, a lot of people normally tell me, Dirk, but you know, everybody's got a story. You know, Bayer's has got a story. You know, France's got a story. Henri, you know, all of these boys, they've got a story, you know. But at the end of the day, what makes L'Avenir special is the specific soil type that we farm on. We've got a beautiful ridge of decomposed shale, and that brings a lot of fruit intensity. And this is something that you'll find in our wines, that elegance, the purity of fruit, the lingering effect. I truly believe that Pinotage should showcase that subtle side of it most of the time, the smooth side of it, the refined side. That's very important for me.
And that is a perception I think we're beginning to shift from the one that a lot of the world had for so many years, sadly, about Pinotage. There's definitely an intensity of fruit to this, which sits on the menu, the Old Oak, alongside the single block. So they're both here for you to try should you wish. You ran us through the process in creating the Chenin Blanc. Was it a fairly similar story in terms of putting together the Pinotage here?
Yeah, like I mentioned, we like to play with components, just like Ransley likes to play with certain ingredients if it comes to cooking. So I've got a few different blocks all across the farm. And this specific one is made in a provenance style, which is our estate range. Again, that's a lovely thing of buying from an estate, is that, you know, it's small scale, you know. When you buy from L'Avenir, our biggest volume is 60,000 bottles, which is nothing, you know. It's small scale, it's hand nurtured. I always say any liter that goes through the cellar needs to touch the human hand. We call it an piece of art. We truly get very emotional if it comes to wine. But it's a piece of art. It's something that you can put into somebody's hand and they need to taste it. And when it comes to Pinotage, we've got the whole of the country on our back. It's almost like playing for the Springboks. You know, you've got the country on your back, and you need to really showcase the best that we can get from this specific grape varietal. I think the beauty of the varietal is that it's got so many different ways of showing itself, but also it's diverse. But at the end of the day, it's something that can age. It's something that has got elegance. It's something that fits food very well. It's got that beautiful sweet spice. It's got that beautiful purple color. I promise you, you can take a Pinotage, you can take some of the other royal varietals, you put them together over time. Pinotage has got the ability to really show great color and aging ability. I always say it's like an elephant, it can age forever. So it's just a great varietal to work with because of its versatility and the fact that it can pair well with food because of that beautiful sweet spice that we get from it.
I suspect you're probably thinking, right, I need to get to the Old Oak to try these wines. Well, jump online by the end of this week. Dine Plan will have bookings available if you're in Johannesburg or next time you come visiting north. Just a quick question on your comments there. I definitely heard you. Sasta wasn't sure she heard you correctly. 100% Pinotage MCC. Did I hear correctly, sir? Maybe just give a little more information there for Sasta and let her know what it looks like, because I suspect it might be a little different to what she's anticipating.
Yeah, it's a beautiful wine. You know, it's made in a méthode champenois, which is traditional champagne style. So we're not allowed to call it champagne, so we call it MCC. But yeah, I think when you work very soft with the grape, you work slow temperature, when fermentation, low temperature, you really get to a place where you got this beautiful, fine little bubble. I think the beauty of great MCC is just the way that it cuts through fatty food, which I personally love. Whenever you have a little bit of pork or foie gras or anything like that, we've got a little bit of a fatty layer in your mouth, you want to clean it up, it's great. But MCC, you can start the night off with it, and it's the beauty of it. It expresses the Pinot Noir side of the crossing. I personally believe that the Pinot Noir should be the mother, but it's actually the father, because they use the pollen of the Pinot Noir onto the stem of the Cinsault. But I really feel that it's the beautiful side of it. It's such a lovely varietal to have part of the DNA and really showcase that candy floss, that moussiness, fine little bubble, that pale onion skin color. It's a beautiful wine. You have to taste it. It's one of our favorite wines on our list. So I don't know if Ransley and them are stocking it, but we'll get them to stock it.
A little bit of pressure on our chef and our sommelier in chief. Ransley asked you about the pairing with the Chenin with this Pinotage. What amongst your varied selection of alluring dishes has come up trumps in terms of a pairing with this Pinotage?
So then the pairing for the Pinotage has to be a dish inspired by my wife that I put on the menu. When I first married my wife 2 years ago, when I first met her 10 years ago, she didn't know how to cook. She could only fry eggs, barely fry eggs. And now she cooks risotto better than half of my chefs in the kitchen. Unfortunately, half of them are watching. But my wife does this lovely short rib dish with that's slow cooked for a couple of hours and topped off with some mushrooms and onion. And I've elevated it a little bit, obviously, because it has to stand up to the stature of the restaurant. And so comfort food is my weakness. So for the perfect pairing of the Pinotage has to be our short rib that we have on the menu currently. We'll do different variations of this dish going forward as seasons change, but it will always be, the gist of the dish will always be on the menu.
Ransley ensuring that he is on good terms when he gets home a little later on this evening. Let's have a quick look at the rest of the wine list, John. I was having a look through it earlier on, and you've got some really lovely wine dotted across the place. We mentioned Ken Forrester's Dirty Little Secret Chenin blended over a few different vintages. You've got some of the Agnes Chardonnay from Peter Island Finlayson. He's making such lovely wine. David Finlayson's Cabernet Sauvignon that won the best in the world at one of the big wine shows just a week or two ago. I think you've got some of that Ataraxia Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in there. There's wine from not just big and small names, but also all of the different regions. Give us a few of the wines you were really excited to be able to place on this list.
Yeah, Dan, so basically when we set out to choose the wines, as I said before, we wanted to feature the best in what all the regions have to offer. But also some of our favorites, we wanted to have a bit of a geeky selection, a bit of a cult selection where Artie Bardnos comes in with his amazing Chenins and obviously all his Shiraz-based blends. But one of my favorites is definitely the Ashburn, which is, in my opinion, a very geeky wine to have on the menu. It's a great Pinotage. Then also some of the Bizzo that we've got, the Semillons. I'm a big fan of those varietals, Semillon, and also looking at some of the white blends. So we've got a nice selection of unusual varietals as well as unusual white blends. So those are really nice to play along with as they all differ tremendously from each other. But some of the good stuff is the Valley that we've got on Orpheus and the Raven was a big one for us. The Gewürztraminer in here. I actually started crying when I drank that bottle. It was a complete emotional experience for me. I've never tasted anything like it. So the Orpheus and Raven was definitely something we've never tried before. And when they came out, we were pleasantly surprised, especially with the story that they tell. The winemakers there, obviously, all the tasting notes, they write music about it. So they've got a song about the tasting notes, and the labels have stories. And it obviously ties up with what we're doing on this side with the Old Oak restaurant. But yeah, there's quite a few stuff on our wine. Sorry, and I'm squizzing to my left over here because there's a massive wine wall staring back at us, and it's the most beautiful thing in the restaurant. And yeah, we can't wait to show everybody what we have and how we can take you on a journey, not just food, but definitely wine as well. So yeah, come on over.
There's also an Age of Grace Viognier from Sandown at Lismore. I think I'll be drinking on my next visit. Some really well-priced wine from Tybosh. Their Crescendo is such a good blend. Some of Miles Mossop's wine is here. The Seriously Old Dirt, if you want something that speaks to Villafonte but isn't at the price point of the C or the M, then that does a great job. It's just a really nice wine. It's not overwhelming. They're not 9,000 wines on the list, but what they do have makes for a really, really good selection. As we have an unexpected guest joining us in the background there, not sure who that is, but yeah, as we come to the end of the show, just heading back down quickly, I'm always interested when I talk to winemakers, other than your own wine, Dirk, when you walk into a restaurant, such as I've done this evening at the Old Oak at Royal Johannesburg, what do you look for in a wine list? What says to you, right, this is a wine list that's really done the job?
Yeah, well, I normally look at specialization. I think when you've got Chenins, you need to have 5 to 10 of them, not too much. I don't want to have a wine list which is like a Bible where you have to take too many, time to page through it. But I love the fact that Ruaan and them, they've put together a great wine list, which has got really focus. I think focus in terms of what food pairings are, but also to showcase the certain sites around the country. I think always when you've got a restaurant, you need to really showcase what the whole industry's got to provide or able to give. I think, and that's something that they do really well. He mentioned Ashbourne. We do a lot of site-specific Pinotage tastings for the industry, where I take some of Emil's wine. We're a bunch of friends in the industry, and we always love to drink each other's wines. And I do believe that buyers and consumers also love it. They like to experiment. And the fact that they've got so many different varietals, which is great. Anything from a Viognier to a sommelier, you want to taste these varietals because you don't taste them quite often. And I think the beauty is that whatever he picked, it's small scale, it's beautiful wines. It's a wine that with a lot of soul, as we mentioned, and I can see they've got a relationship with these winemakers and their properties. So it's always great to see the great wines coming out of South Africa, and they just show so well. The quality just shows well. When you mention all of those winemakers' names, I'm like, oh, they're great winemakers. So being able to really pick the best and to showcase that in your restaurant is just I would say a lacquer pick or a privilege.
As is coming to eat here, the decor, and I'll be taking it in through the course of this evening's show. It is delightfully appointed, but I'm also looking out to that kids area that my children have already fallen in love with, so I will be here on a regular basis, working my way through Ransley's menu before he changes it again, which probably won't be too far off, but also having fun with the wine list that's just got a really fun and interesting selection of wines at a really good range of price points. So I would encourage you to come down, check it out for yourself, try the Old Oak wines, the Chenin and the Pinotage, but there is, as we've shown, plenty of wine beyond that. And if you do want to book, we'll be on Dine Plan by the end of this week, or you can jump onto the Royal Johannesburg website, which leads me, guys, to say thank you for the evening. It's been great watching this all come together. I know it's been a frustrating process because this was scheduled to be open some time ago, but COVID wreaked havoc. It did leave us, though, with a lot of time to anticipate and look forward to what we can now revel in, which is this Old Oak. Dirk, the wine is lovely, and I think it's a terrific addition. Often it's almost an afterthought. Let's have a wine that's got our label on, and that's about as far as the thought process goes. This is clearly very much a collaboration, and it shows in what you put together. Ransley, I love the menu. Ruaan, I'm going to be working my way through your wine list very enthusiastically and very thoroughly. And I look forward to spending plenty of time back here. So Dirk, for joining us down in Stellenbosch, and Ransley and Ruaan up here in Johannesburg. Guys, thank you all. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much.
So
Thanks
there
for
we
having
go.
us.
Yeah, winemaker down at Lavenier, who have put together the house wines, although they're a little more than that, the Chenin and the Pinotage under the Old Oak label for the Old Oak restaurant. Ransley running the kitchen, Ruaan making sure everything works and the wine is splendid, and together a spot the Nichols are going to be calling home, I suspect, for some time to come. Do come and try it out. It really is worth it. If you are not up in Johannesburg, though, and you're down in the Cape, there's an event to look out for. It's coming up in a couple of weeks' time. It's the Hop, which brings together Kearmont, Kleinhout, the guys who make Tamboerskloof, and De Trafford, that lovely little corner of Stellenbosch. They've got an event coming up, and so we're going to be speaking to all three estates. That's on Thursday's show in what is a very busy month. Also coming up this month, we've got next week Spencer von Domier and the South African Sommeliers Association. We have got a celebration of Chardonnay Day on the horizon, headlined by Kevin Grant from Ataraxia, which I'm really looking forward to, and plenty more wine in between. For now, I'll leave you to spend the rest of your Monday evening contemplating your booking at the Old Oak, licking your lips at the prospect of Ransley's menu, and thinking which of those two Lavenier Old Oak specials you'll be trying out first. Have a great evening. Keep drinking and supporting South African wine, and we'll see you back on the show on Thursday. Goodbye. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.